Okay, hello and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome. And if you are returning here, welcome. So let's see. That's what I was going to tell you guys. Tomorrow night is book club. So 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be discussing the book, Emotionally Immature, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents is the book. Fantastic book. So I hope you guys can join us. And let's see if anybody's hopping on tonight. Bogart, Dandelion, hooray. Hello, welcome everybody. Sophia. How's everybody's week going? Anything new and exciting in your world? Sarah Bellum, Mark, Marina, Karen, Mariposa, Jennifer, Joe, Kamami, bonsoir, Kamami, Karina, Darissa, and Sam, hello. I was just saying book club is tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to join us, it'd be fantastic to have you. Healthy Love, hello. Tanitria. Ray says, long time no see. So yeah, got lots of familiar faces here tonight. Dandelion Green says, I can't be at the book club, but I loved that book. I look forward to hearing the recording. Good deal. Yeah, I am excited for the discussion as well. I'm also kind of thinking I might do something a little bit different with book club. So I'm thinking that we'll keep what we're doing, but then there's still a lot I have to learn, you guys, but I'm thinking that I would like to do a pre-recorded video with just maybe my top 5 takeaways. So that might be in the works. Karen, I know, right? Karen says, Dana, how can it be the last Thursday again? I know this month has flown by. It is amazing. James, hello. So while people are coming into the chat, I thought I would bring up something that Angie and I were talking about yesterday in our chat over on her YouTube channel, Angie Atkinson. And this is such a common thing that we both come across all of the time. And it's basically people really focusing on trying to figure out if somebody else is a narcissist. Are they a narcissist? Are they a sociopath? Are they a psychopath? Is this even really abuse? Is it me? Is it them? Is this a problem? I see all of these different red flags and what do you think? Do you think that they're a narcissist? And all of this kind of going back and forth with trying to get clarity. And it's understandable that a person would have these questions, but thank you, Joe, for the live stream donation. He says, keep up the good work. Dana, I love you and Angie. Well, thank you. It's understandable that a person would have these questions. And so the point that I was making the other day was it's not about us trying to figure out them. It's about us trying to figure out us. So when you turn inward and you figure out and you get in tune with understanding when you are being treated in a way that you are not okay with, to any degree, it doesn't have to be so extreme, even to a small degree, that's enough. So I think so often we're so afraid that we're going to overreact that we feel like, oh, we need concrete proof. I need to stay in this awful job or in this awful relationship because what if I'm wrong? What if they're not a narcissist? Or what if they're not, a sociopath or whatever? And And this is one of the reasons I really try to focus on the behavior, and it's not the label. The label is helpful. I think it gives people the clarity and understanding that there is such a thing, that not everybody is like you, and that there is such extreme behavior out there that it can be considered a personality disorder. But with that being said, it's not only personality disordered people that can have some problematic behavior. It can be anybody. And so this is another reason as to why when people start learning about all of this, they are like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing narcissists everywhere. And really, I think what they're saying is, I'm seeing problematic behavior everywhere. So it's good. And that can be terrifying at first, because you're like, oh no, what is it? What am I doing to attract these people? Am I being hypervigilant? Is this because I have PTSD? What's wrong with me? Why am I seeing these people everywhere? And it's a stage in awakening where you start realizing, oh my gosh, I have been glossing over so much for so long, giving other people the benefit of the doubt, or thinking that I was overreacting or what have you. And it can be very overwhelming when you start seeing reality clearly. But it's such a game changer when you can focus on, okay, knowing when you're being treated, knowing when you're being mistreated, for sure, but also knowing when you're being treated in a way that you are not okay with. And that might be something as simple as a person you don't know sitting too close to you. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they might have some strange social skills. It might not matter if like the room is really small and there's not enough space in there for everybody. It doesn't matter. If it's not comfortable for you, then it's a sign, okay, I need to do something different. Either I kind of suffer through, or I can see if I can get up, move to a different part of the room. I could maybe say something if it's not a space constraint, if it's just somebody that's just uncomfortably close. We don't have to wait. Just because we can tolerate being treated in a way that we're not comfortable with doesn't mean that we need to, I guess is what I'm saying. So just because we can tolerate it doesn't mean that we need to. And that's where assertive behavior comes in. Well, I should say assertive behavior and deal breakers. So when we're able to be assertive, then that would be something like, hey, that's, could you possibly move over a little bit? However you want to phrase that. I could just really use some more room. Or if somebody is doing something that's really crossing a line with you and they're just being really inappropriate, it's okay to just have deal breakers and to be like, you know what? I'm not okay with that. I don't care what their reason was. Because here's the thing. I actually heard this put a really great way last night. I was in a class last night for mandatory reporting, and the instructor, it was interesting because I've had a lot more experience than most people in that class. And so it was interesting to kind of watch other people kind of work through this process about when to report suspected or actual harm. And so there was all of these concerns about, well, what if I'm making a big deal out of nothing? Well, what if it's just their culture? Well, what if it's they were having a bad day? What if that's just how they play around? What if the child was exaggerating? Well, what if? And the instructor she was so good about this. She said, this is not a value judgment at all about another person, because here's the deal. The line is, where is the law? So if you know in this situation, if you know where the law is, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they had a bad day, a bad childhood, if it's their culture, if it's the way that they joke, none of that matters. What matters is, where is the law and where do you need to take action accordingly? And I thought that's so true with boundaries as well, because it's so easy to start pushing that line and think, oh, well, it's their culture, it's their age, it's their, it's how they joke, it's this and it's that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's where your line is. So that has to be your North Star, is where is your line for when you're being treated in a way that you're not okay with or that makes you uncomfortable. Because we can all justify anything. but doesn't mean that we should. So I thought that was helpful and worth passing along. Dandelion, that's a really great point. She says, how can we discern when we are being defensive about valid criticism or when we need to validate ourselves because the criticism is abusive? Great question. I guess here's how I look at that. To me, that's kind of two different things. So valid criticism doesn't have to be critical. It can be, my line is I expect for other people to treat me with dignity and respect. If you're going to be in my inner circle, that's the criteria. And so I don't, even if it's criticism that's valid, if it's said in a really aggressive, hurtful, condescending way that's not meant to help me improve myself, it's meant to kick me down, then that's not helpful. Because it's my personality, I always try to just squeeze out every single positive thing I can from any situation so that I can use it for my highest and greatest good. That's just how I am. So even if somebody's, has a bunch of really ugly behavior, I'm like, I may or may not say something depending on the person, depending on the situation, but that kind of stuff would not be in my inner circle. But I would take away whatever I could from it. For example, there's been, YouTube is the internet. So like you get a lot of, it's the general public. You get a lot of people saying a lot of things. Some of the best criticism, some of the most impactful changes I've made with my channel have been because of criticism. It's all been valid. Some of it's been constructive and some of it's just been downright ugly. But if there was a kernel of truth to it, I tried really hard to get my hurt feelings out of the way and just examine it for what it was. But the people that, came at me hurtfully, I wouldn't I'm not going to have them in my inner circle because I don't, who needs to be continually kicked down. But if it's abusive criticism, it's abusive criticism. And I think Pia Melody would say, I think she would look at it in terms of boundaries, that kind of containment boundary of what we let in and what we put out. And so kind of allowing what are you going to let come into your world. And I think we all kind of know if there's a kernel of truth there. But again, I think it's reasonable to have the expectation to be treated with dignity and respect at all times. Okay, let's see. Mariposa says, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse to see problematic behavior more easily after the abusive relationship. I'm 50-50. Ignorance was bliss, but I also like the truth. My eyes are wide open. Yeah, I can relate. There's ignorance is bliss until it's not, right? Until, you kind of just go over a cliff because of it. And I guess if I had to choose, I would choose seeing reality eyes wide open, because then you're not only just aware of kind of the darker sides of reality, but then you can also appreciate the good. That can take a little while because at first it can be very discouraging and depressing to just see so much dysfunction. And then I'll say too, there's different waves of awareness, right? So then there does kind of come a time and place where then we start to reflect inward and we start to see, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, there's stuff within me too. And that I think is just the whole journey through personal growth is what that is. But yeah, it can be painful when we start down that path for sure. Okay, let me scroll up here. I got a new phone. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm getting sent some messages here. Okay. Jamie asks, Dana, what do you know about autoimmune disease issues being aggravated or possibly being brought about from narcissistic abuse? Well, autoimmune diseases, the human body in general is negatively impacted by stress. Stress contributes to all kinds of things. You name it. Like anything negative health-wise, stress can really exacerbate that, and autoimmune diseases in particular. So it can really be a contributing factor for inflammation, which tends to be huge. Stress can impair healing, thinning hair, weight gain, weight loss, addictions, migraines, insomnia, you name it. Stress is one of those things where we all have it and we all know about it, but we don't really know how to effectively handle it. And it's so important that we learn these skills because it is. I mean, it plays such a major role in our life, whether we realize it or not. So what you can do if you are struggling with an autoimmune disease, and I should say also just from having a large amount of stress in general, is working towards relieving yourself of that stress as much as possible. So it doesn't need to be something major like, okay, I'm going to go to this yoga retreat for 3 days. It's little things in little ways throughout the day. It's maybe allowing yourself an extra 15 minutes to get to work in the morning so you're not rushed. It's listening to thinking, the whole Marie Kondo thing, asking yourself what sparks joy and doing that throughout the day. There's so many little shifts that we can make in our life that can really contribute to us bringing about more joy. So for example, if your routine is normally you wake up and you listen to the news while you're getting ready and you realize, hey, this doesn't really contribute anything to like my day. I find that I'm more stressed out and it just happens to be the routine. Well, then maybe it's time to consider doing something that you really do enjoy. So maybe it's listening to an audiobook while you're getting ready. Maybe it's listening to your favorite podcast or some fun music. If you're doing, chores around the house, thinking about, okay, how can I make this enjoyable? Because it's these little moments that are our life. So trying to figure out how to bring more joy into your life is a really great start. I think it can be easier to think about it that way. How can I bring more joy? How can I do things that spark joy in big and small ways throughout the day than it is to think about how can I reduce stress? Because when we approach it like that, sometimes that can kind of seem overwhelming, like it would be too many major changes we would need to make. But the more you start putting in the positive, the more it crowds out the negative. So just some thoughts there. Okay, let's see here. Mark asks, if narcissists can't love, then how much do they really love their children? Well, they don't. If we're talking about a person who lacks the ability to effectively bond to others, and that's kind of the thought behind narcissism, is people with narcissism, they're really high in defensiveness. And so if you think about it in terms of like your fight mechanism, okay, whenever we go into fight mode, we're angry. And so when a person's continually defensive, that's kind of where they are. When we're continually defensive like that, we have walls up. We can't bond with somebody and be defensive at the same time. So we can't even really hear another person if we're defensive, because that part of our brain, that logic and critical thinking part of our brain, is offline when we're defensive. So nothing can come. There's no solution that can be reached when another person is defensive. So kind of backing that up with when you've got a person who's chronically defensive and they just don't bond to other people, maybe they had some sort of trauma in their past where, in a lot of this, I think the vast majority of the stuff tends to happen subconsciously. So it's like they kind of learn down the road of, again, for whatever reason, they somehow got the message that having emotions like love, like caring about somebody, because all of that requires being vulnerable. If they have emotions like that, it is uncomfortable for them. Maybe they got hurt. Maybe they had an abusive childhood. Maybe, who knows what happened somewhere along the line, or they got to some place where they just saw no value in emotions like that. And so they just kind of, your brain, it's your brain does this. It's not so much that we're consciously doing this, just kind of turned things off. So there's not that connection there. If you're familiar at all with the show Game of Thrones, I think a good example of this is the character of Cersei Lannister. So let me scroll down in the chat so people can see if you guys know what I'm talking about. So her character, if you're a fan of the show, is she supposedly loves her children. She would do anything for her children, on and on and on. But she's also just this really kind of wicked woman and seems to really have no empathy or no remorse. And she's very kind of cruel and heartless. And there was a scene in the show that I thought that sums it up well, because throughout the whole show, I kept thinking it's very strange. I'm like, they have her character off, because a person like that wouldn't love their children and do anything for them. And so I had a really hard time for 7 seasons kind of reconciling how this could be. And then there was an episode where she blew up the sept, and her son ends up, I don't want to give too much. Well, if you haven't watched it by now, you're probably not going to watch it. Anyways, her son ends up dying, and kind of fast forward a few episodes, her husband asks her about, the child's father asks her, what happened to him? How did he die? And Cersei makes this comment, and she says, he betrayed me. That was her response. And I thought, bingo, that's it. It's her children were an extension of her. So it was never that she loved them. It was because they were as an extension of her. And so the fact that he betrayed her, it was like, well, he died. I'm sad. I'm over it. He betrayed me. That's what happens. And she just moved on. So, and also too, that's obviously an extreme example. Narcissism. Here's another thing. People, and I get it. They get concerned because they're like, well, it goes back to this. I'm seeing narcissists everywhere. And could I be a narcissist? I'm seeing some of these traits within myself. And is this contagious? Or could I have turned into one? Or all of this. And I think it's important to realize that narcissism it's a human trait. So in and of itself, narcissism is not problematic. Narcissism is what keeps us safe. It's what drives us to set goals, and it contributes to healthy self-esteem and in a lot of positive things within limits. So there's healthy narcissism, which is what I was talking about. The ability of kind of, why not me? Why not now? You have faith in yourself. You're motivated. You feel that you have that you're worth, that you treat yourself with value, that you matter, that you believe that you matter. When it gets past that, where it becomes this kind of blinding degree of self-absorption, that's when it starts becoming a problem. So everybody is somewhere along that spectrum. Sometimes we might be further down the road where it's a problem. But the thing is, though, if we realize it, so for example, oftentimes after abuse, a person is in so much pain that is all consuming. and that's all that they can focus on. That's all that they want to talk about. You just kind of get this feeling of, I don't have room. I don't have room in my life for anything else. I can't be there to support anybody else. I'm so consumed by this. And that's normal. It's sort of like, if you break your foot, or not even that, if you stub your toe really, really hard, that's going to be at the forefront of your mind until that pain goes away. It's the same with psychological pain. It's there at the forefront of your mind to get your attention so that we actually resolve it, so that we do something about it. So it doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't necessarily mean any of these things. It's just, this is kind of what happens when we tend to get into pain. So I hope that made sense. I kind of feel like I wandered off there. Joe says that he wandered off away from the extreme toxicity of his family members. It was the best thing he ever did. He never had such a clear mind, body, and spirit. Yeah. Yep, I agree. It's fantastic when you just realize, you know what, this, like, I don't have to live like this, and I can really limit my contact with certain people. And that's okay. And it is okay. I think another good kind of guiding light is to think about where your safety and sanity is in every single situation. If something's putting your safety or your sanity at risk, then it's worth reevaluating to see how you can make it not be that way. Because, having peace in your life is a big thing. It's important. Okay, let's see. Tiffany. Let me scroll up here. Dandelion is talking about her ex, saying that he was hypersensitive. Let me catch the... Tiffany says, I'm not sure if the guy in her life is a narcissist or if he's just hypersensitive. Okay, well, let's back that up a little bit, okay? So let's even take away the label of narcissist, because that can be added confusion for no reason. So if he's treating you in a way that you're not okay with, and if you've brought this up with him and said, hey, I'm not okay with this, whatever he's doing, you're lying, you're cheating, you're yelling, you're calling me names, I'm not okay with that. If he's hypersensitive, if he's saying he's hypersensitive in terms of being highly reactive, then that's a problem. So if you're being treated in a way that you're not okay with, and you've brought it up to this person and then they continue doing it, they aren't respecting your boundaries, and that's a problem. So, and if a person's if they're not aware that what they're doing is wrong, even or hurtful, even if you continue bringing it up to them and say, hey, you know what? I don't like to be yelled at. I don't like to be called names. That's not okay with me. And they keep justifying it. Well, you know what? You shouldn't have forgotten to buy cat food, and you didn't do the laundry, and this, that, and the other. It's okay. So this is important. It's okay for a person to be angry or frustrated, but it's not okay for them to become abusive. That's the line. So I would just make that known. Like, I don't do this. But the thing is, though, when we draw a boundary, a boundary is only as effective as the consequence we have for it. So if this is a relationship that you're not going to leave and here's what a lot of people do. is they'll say, yeah, I keep drawing this boundary. I have told my mother or I've told my boyfriend a dozen times to stop doing this. Like, it really hurts my feelings. It's not okay with me. And they just keep doing it. And here I am, I'm just drawing and redrawing this boundary over and over again. And when will they learn? And where that is going off track is because there's no consequence. So there has to eventually be, and having a consequence goes back to having that line with how we expect to be treated. And it's a lot easier for us to toe that line when we really, truly do believe that we have value and that we matter, and that being treated with dignity and respect isn't just something nice to have, it's everything. So, and it's not an unreasonable thing. I think a lot of people that have grown up with abuse, they've been in abuse for a long time, they kind of feel like, oh, well, like that seems like a pie in the sky kind of a thing. And it's not. It's the basics of appropriate adult behavior. There's, it's not unreasonable at all. Okay, let me see. So does that help, Tiffany? And it gives some clarity about if he's a narcissist or hypersensitive and kind of what in that matters. And here's something else I thought about the other day is, I think it was after that live stream with Angie, of course, we're talking about narcissistic abuse, and somebody had asked the question, well, does this person have to be, really great question, does a person have to be diagnosed as a narcissist? Or does a person even have to be a narcissist in order for us to be treated for narcissistic abuse? And the answer is no. Narcissistic abuse, those things tend to go hand in hand. A person that's abusive tends to have a problematic personality, but to the extent that it can be considered a personality disorder, but not all of the time. But when a person is behaving abusively in any way, shape, or form, they're acting narcissistically. And what I mean by that is when a person feels justified and entitled to treat other people horribly, that's coming from a place of self-absorption, of I should be able, you did this, I'm going to punish you. You did this, I'm going to treat you like that. That kind of stuff. So when this term came out, when the term narcissistic abuse came out, I don't even think personality disorders, I think it was before the DSM. So I don't even think personality disorders were really an official thing. So it's more about just that degree, that personality trait, again, that we all have of narcissism. It's that degree of it. So Alice Miller was the one that started observing this with parents and children. And it was parents who were so self-absorbed and preoccupied with their own stuff that it was like Cersei Lannister. They were turning their children, they did not see their children as individuals. They saw their children as extensions of themselves. And so it was sort of like, okay, well, I didn't achieve these certain things in life. So now you need to go out and do this. I never became a musician. You need to. I never went to college. You need to. I never was in beauty pageants. You need to be. And by doing so, that level of control over another person, it denies them of their individuality. And not only that, but then it's this kind of like, you need to fit in this box in order for me to love you. And we're going to talk more about this tomorrow night with the emotionally immature parents. When you have a parent, especially, or with abusive partners, it's the same way. It's this expectation of my love is very conditional, and it's only if you fit inside this box. And if you don't fit inside the box, then you need to start grinding down parts of yourself in order to fit inside that box. The thing is, though, there's no love there, because what their expectations of us are going to be continually you can't twist yourself into enough of a pretzel in order to fit inside that box. And then by the end of it, when a person finally realizes that they can't handle it anymore, and they're like, you know what, I got to get out of here. That's when they realize, oh my gosh, I don't know who I am. I don't know how to make decisions. I don't know how to trust my judgment. I don't know what opinions I have. I don't know who I am. And that tends to be why, because that part of their essence, their individuality was never cultivated, because they were never allowed to. And that's a great point. Dandelion says, and I think that box keeps getting smaller and smaller. Yes. Yeah. And it tends to. And that's the thing too. Like, they have such an emotionally immature understanding of the world that when we don't fit inside their box, it's seen to them as an act of rebellion. So I think a lot of this is why this is my thought, my theory on it. This is why they tend to feel so entitled and justified, because to them, it's an act of rebellion. It's almost, if we're talking about leaving, if we're not going to be inside their box, it's also considered to them as an act of aggression. So you're not dealing with a person that understands, that navigates reality in the same way that you do. So this is why they get so upset. This is why they lash out. This is why they don't apologize. Because in their mind, Pia Melody would say, they completely lack a containment boundary. There was no healthy boundary there that ever developed, where, like what I was saying about, it's okay for a person to be angry or frustrated. It's not okay for them to become abusive. And for them, there's not that boundary. I was watching an interview earlier on with Chris Watts. And one of the things that he had said to, I think it was a police officer in the interview, is he was talking about, he made the comment, well, you never know what you might do unless you were in my situation. If you just, if you snap and you're just unhappily married and you don't know what you would do. And of course, those of us that were in the comments were like, well, true to a point. I'm pretty sure we wouldn't kill our pregnant wife and our 2 children and then throw them away in oil barrels. Like, that's not, you never know what you might do, to an extent. I mean, that's part of that no containment boundary. A person with no containment boundary, there is no respect for individuals, for rights of others, for anything. It's whatever they want in the moment. And because they feel so entitled and justified, because, I lost the name. Because they can justify any of their behavior. Like I was saying, any one of us can justify something. Oh, I did X, I killed my wife because I was unhappily married. I had to steal from my company because I had bills to pay. I had to, I was going 100 miles an hour because I was late for work. Whatever. Like, there's always reasons for what we do, but it doesn't mean that that's okay. Okay, people are talking about confusion here. Tiffany says, I keep worrying too that I keep attracting people like that to me. I'm not trying to sound like a victim, but after a while you start wondering. Girl, I hear you. And if I had a nickel for every time I had heard that and had felt that, because I felt the same way. I'm like, seriously, one time it felt like a hit and run accident. 2 times, what on earth is going on? Like, there's something going on here that I'm not consciously aware of. Then there was, a few more that I went on a few dates with that, again, this was so over the top. Like, this wasn't, just something that could have been handled with assertive communication and boundaries, like extreme behavior. And I felt the exact same way. Like, what what is it? I feel like I'm cursed. Am I attracting these people? And if so, how do I make that stop? And the reality is that a wide variety of people are going to be attracted to us for a wide variety of reasons throughout our life. And we have no control over that. We have no control over who is attracted to us. But we do have control over who we let into our life and how long we let them stay, and what level we let them into our life. So for a lot of us, I think that struggle with understanding healthy boundaries. I know, I shouldn't speak for other people, but for myself, I didn't really have a lot of circles. It was sort of like you were either in my circle or you were a stranger. There wasn't really no middle ground. And that was a problem. I didn't realize, not only did I not realize it was a problem at the time, I thought it was a good thing. I saw myself, I'm just an open book. I had nothing to hide. I'm willing to share anything to anybody whenever they ask. And I had no problem doing that. Well, that's not healthy. So the result of that was that I overshared with a lot of the wrong people because I didn't know how to effectively build trust. I was very quick to trust other people. I was very quick to take other people at face value. I was very quick, especially if they were funny and friendly and intelligent and just kind of overall really likable people. I was very quick to move them into my inner circle. And if they wanted to, and if they started up a whirlwind and they wanted to talk to me all the time and spend all this time with me, I jumped into it because and that was unhealthy too. But at the time, it felt like a soulmate connection. It felt amazing. It didn't feel unhealthy at all. And then, of course, you start to actually get to know a person, and then you start, oh, yikes, I don't think we had that much in common after all, or this person's just dangerous. And how did I not see it? So if you're finding a lot of the wrong people in your life, I think it's a good idea to really slow down when you're first meeting people, and slowing down, be very mindful about what you're sharing, because what people with poor boundaries in general can do is it's kind of a human nature thing. If somebody shares something deeply personal about them, what we tend to do is we tend to share at the same level. So if they tell you some sort of story of, they were in a car accident, you might share a story about how you were in a car accident or how something really traumatic or major happened to you. But if they keep doing it, then they tell you all about their abusive childhood. And then you start telling them all about yours. They start telling you all about their issues with their ex-wife or ex-husband. And then you start sharing all of yours. At the time, it can feel like, we're really bonding. We're having these amazing conversations. But with an abusive person, what's really happening is we're making the deepest parts of ourselves vulnerable. And what they tend to do, because they have no containment boundary, anything is fair game. If and when we ever disagree with them, or we get into a fight, we have basically a disagreement, and they just go bananas, they're going to start using whatever, anything's fair game to them. So then they'll start using that stuff against you in like the most hurtful, low blow kind of ways. And it's completely unnecessary. So going slow, learning that trust is something that's built up over time. It's not something that's freely given. Paying attention to a lot of the early warning signs and this goes back to the whole really acknowledging when you're being treated in a way that you are not comfortable with. Because so many of us feel like, I don't know if I want to take I don't know if I want to say anything. I don't know if I want to take corrective action. What if I'm making a big deal out of nothing? What if they don't really mean it? What if it's just me? What if it's my PTSD? and so then we kind of let things continue. We just don't say anything until things become so major that we either have to leave or we just really start stuffing our feelings down deep. So I think there's the acknowledgement of it doesn't need to be a huge concrete problem. In order for you to do something about it, or in order for you to leave, the fact that it's uncomfortable to you is enough of a problem to do something different. So what I mean by that, so let's say, for example, you meet somebody online and you're online dating, right? And kind of right out of the gate, they start telling you everything you'd ever want to hear. Oh, you're so beautiful. You're so funny. You're so talented. I always hoped I'd meet a woman just like you, blah, blah, blah. They're, signing all of their texts, kissy faces, and they're just going on. And maybe you've never even met them. You haven't met them yet. And then they start asking you, or maybe you have one or two dates. They start asking you for nude pictures. They start trying to talk sexy talk with you. Things just escalate really quickly. And sometimes I don't know, there's so many different dynamics at work. But not letting them set the pace and just taking things slowly and seeing a lot of this stuff as the red flags that they are. Because that's the other thing with red flags is we're all looking for red flags, but the reality is, red flags are felt, they're not seen. And that's why we tend to keep looking for them. But there's not a literal red flag out there. Just like you're not going to probably catch your significant other in bed with somebody else if you think they're cheating. There's all of these early warning signs or just warning signs in general that lead up to that we have to have our eyes open for and realize that that's a problem. If there's no trust in the relationship, if the relationship is perpetually confusing, if it's a lot of mental anguish, if it's anxiety, if it's depression, if it feels emotionally draining, if conversations don't ever seem to get resolved, if there's just no communication, you're walking on eggshells, you're having personality changes within yourself that are not good, that this relationship is bringing out the worst in you, these are the signs. And any one of those things is a valid reason to reconsider your relationship, or at a minimum, address it with the other person if you're not afraid of them. But at a minimum, fear of having a conversation, fear of that they might hurt you, that's never a part of a normal relationship or a healthy relationship. So that's a big one. Okay. Okay, Purple Belt asks, I just started online dating after 2 years. If someone's first and second comments are, like, hey, sexy, what do you think about that? Well, for me, that tells me that they're looking for sex, because that's not a person that's looking to impress you. And that's not a person that's looking to, they're just not being on their best behavior. That's pretty crass behavior. And this is what's so sad, is because I think young people, especially these days, this stuff has all become normal, which is tragic, because I really do just wonder, does anybody really know how to value themselves? And this isn't me being old or a fuddy-duddy. It's if a person is interested in you, they will treat you with dignity and respect, and they're going to want to actually get to know you, male or female. But there's a lot of people out there that are online. They're looking for sex. They're looking to just sex chat with somebody else because they're bored. I would say probably nowadays, the vast majority of the time, they're married. So for me, when I was dating, I didn't even entertain any texts that started off like that. To me, that's rude. You don't know me like that. And it's, that's not how I want to be approached. And, that should be, to me, that's, adults should know that. And adults do know that. If there was sincere interest there, they wouldn't behave like that. Somebody who's looking to have sex behaves like that. Okay, let's see here. Broken Winged Angel says, when you lash out due to things, is that okay? I have a counselor. Okay, are you saying that you have a diagnosis of bipolar and that you're on medication, and yet I am still the crazy one? You're saying that you're still the crazy one, quote unquote, crazy one for reacting. Okay, well, I guess let me just start with this. So here's my two cents on it. Bipolar and mental illness in general, whether it be schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar, in any of this, to me, it's not crazy. It's a chemical imbalance. Big difference. So, the chemical imbalance, when it can be corrected, then a person lives a relatively functioning life. There might be some challenges here and there, but they are for sure not crazy. Chemical imbalance, yes. Crazy, no. To me, crazy is when a person knows it's emotional immaturity and deep dysfunction, to me, is the true definition of craziness. It's just a bunch of illogical or erratic behavior. So I guess let me just say that first and foremost, because it really bothers me when people, especially abusers or anybody else, weaponizes mental health in general in order to shame or belittle somebody else. And that's, if you're struggling with bipolar as it is, nobody needs added stigma on that. Okay. So then lashing out, I guess this would be some time for reflection, because what can happen if you're around somebody that's continually and intentionally pushing your buttons is it's difficult for any one of us to sit there and have that happen. So if that's what's going on, then that has nothing to do with you being bipolar. That has everything to do with their behavior. And, so I guess it would depend on if I'd have to know more about the context and like the dynamic and kind of what's going on that precedes you feeling reactive. But and I think you would probably know, like, I think most people tend to understand, like, man, it really feels that this person's pushing my buttons in order to get a reaction. And then when I do, that's when they tell me that I'm crazy. Or if I try to set a boundary, they tell me that I'm overreacting or that I'm crazy. If I have any type of problem with their behavior, then it's never them, it's always me. Like that's concerning. And that's very standard for abusive people. Sky Mia says, I've read that the chemical imbalance theory is not really backed up scientifically. That's not to say medication doesn't work for some people, but you're definitely not crazy if you have bipolar. Yeah, I would agree. You're definitely not crazy. There's different theories, kind of nature and nurture, that are thought to contribute to mental illness. Stress is a big one. Stress can contribute to psychotic breaks. They can contribute, if a person has certain stressful events in their life, there might be certain times of the year where they just don't do well, and they end up having, I guess you could say, kind of just a psychotic episode. So it's been my experience that more often, and the vast majority of time, like I would say upwards 90% or up. Medication, the right medication for the right disorder makes an ocean of difference. And that is just the coolest thing to see when a person's really been struggling with mental health and maybe they weren't aware of what was going on and they get on the right medication and it's night and day, absolutely night and day. So, I know there's such a stigma against mental health in general and against getting treatment for mental health, but there is no shame in that. We would have no problem taking a pill if taking medication if we were diabetic, or like if we needed medication in some way, shape, or form. To me, it's along the same lines. You just got to do what's right for you, I guess, at the end of the day. Okay, let's see here. Sarah Bellum says, Dana, how can we tell we're projecting our good character traits onto someone else? I think the best way to tell this is to really get to know the other person. So a lot of it's just time. It's just really getting to know a person and seeing them in a variety of situations. How are they? How do they react when you set a boundary, when you say no, when you possibly disagree with them? How are they when they get sick, or when they're under stress, or they're stuck in traffic, or they are frustrated, or when they get angry? How do they behave? When you can see a person in a wide variety of situations, it's a lot easier to see their behavior for what it is. But I think most of us, and this is just a human brain thing, our brain tends to fill in gaps. Our brain doesn't like things it can't figure out. So like it just kind of, it's a default. It just tends to fill in the gaps. This is why, and we tend to get continually caught off guard by this, especially with people. So, and yeah, I would say primarily with people. So we tend, especially if you're talking to somebody, let's say you meet a person online, you haven't met them yet in person. You've been chatting with them, spending lots of time with them every day, hours and hours and hours every day. It feels like you know them. It feels like they're a soulmate. There's this intense connection. And then you go and you meet them in person. And oh my gosh, it's nothing how you thought. They are not how you thought they were at all. The connection that you thought you had is not there. It's very different. And it's not that they changed necessarily. It's that we started making a bunch of connections that weren't necessarily there. And then you see it's the fantasy. And then you see it and you live it, and it's the reality. And this is one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of, if you're dating and you're meeting people online, to really limit that time you spend texting and talking on the phone and Skyping or whatever it is that you're doing. Really, a few conversations, and then meet them in person to find out if there really is a connection there. Because here's the thing, it can either be very disappointing to you, or it can be very disappointing to them. And it just saves everybody a lot of hurt and heartache, and unnecessary hurt or heartache, if you can just meet a person sooner than later. So, and then time will tell, right? Like, so the whole projecting good qualities, you can tell by their behavior. So if you think that they are this really upstanding, moral, solid person, and then you find out that they're, cheating, or that they're stealing, or that they're doing these things, that's when we kind of have to take a step back and we're like, well, wait a minute. Is this person who we thought they were, or is there some other stuff going on here? Do we kind of need to reevaluate? Elizabeth says, does anyone feel like narcissists avoid them now after knowledge, like you don't play the game and they leave? Yes. So what you're talking about is healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are like garlic to a vampire. Healthy boundaries are such a repellent to abusive people, because their whole goal is I need to get you in this box. That's just their worldview. It's totally different. Maybe it might help to view it as, kind of the two main, I guess, worldviews would be, there's kind of these solution-oriented people out there, and then there's the domination over people out there. And so if we're solutions-oriented and we come across a domination-driven person, and you now realize, oh my gosh, not everybody out there is solutions-oriented. There's people out there that would rather hurt themselves than to see you win. Even if you're like, there's nothing to even win. Like, we're not even playing a game. Like, there's not, you know what I mean? Like, you're just so confused because their behavior seems so erratic. But for some people, every little thing is a power struggle. And if you hold your boundaries, and again, you don't have to, this isn't a thing that you have to consciously think about in time. If you're aware of when you're being mistreated, then that's your boundary. And so then you're continually holding it. Then they say, hey, hey, babe, like they're calling you all these pet names. You haven't even met them yet. They're sending you all kinds of lewd pictures. They're treating you like an afterthought. Hey, what are you doing tonight? You want to come over? Can I come over there? Stuff like that. All of that is just disrespect written all over it. I know we live in this day and age where people do things like that and it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal because you're unintentionally setting the tone of, yeah, sure. You can, I'll go over to your house. You can come over to my house. We can have sex right away. We can send sexy pictures to each other right away. Like, there's no healthy boundaries functional boundaries maybe is a less kind of judgmental way to say that. Functional boundaries are functional and they work. And you can tell when they're working because it keeps out everything that you don't want. So yeah, holding the line is a big thing. And then they tend to get annoyed and then they leave. Yeah, Changing My Life says, I almost feel like I was catfished. Like I was in love and it was real to me, but he was just playing games to feel power and control. Yeah, and that's, with online dating, it's just changed. It's just changed so much over the years that you really have to have like a very healthy degree of skepticism and just realize probably, I would say at least half the people on there are married. And there's a good percentage of them that are just looking for sex, and that a lot of them really lie because they're married or because they're just looking for sex. So they're going to tell you everything that you want to hear. They're going to paint they're living in this fantasy land of being a very different person because, they're not trying to, there's no sincerity there because they're not looking for anything sincere. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Sim Lover says, my ex drives past my house a lot. We've been broken up for 4 months. I have nightmares of him trying to kill me. Is that normal? Is him stalking me like that mean he'll hoover? I have him blocked. Having nightmares that somebody is trying to kill you is not normal. It tends to be, I would say, at a minimum, an extreme anxiety dream because he's stalking you, and that's terrifying. So the fact that you're feeling threatened when you're awake would make sense, that you're feeling that your brain is processing all of that when you're asleep, and that's coming out that you're feeling threatened in these bad dreams. So it's definitely a warning sign that there's danger, because the way that he's acting is not normal. Normal people don't do that. It's been 4 months. It's time to move on. That's intimidating behavior. It's obsessive behavior. So I wouldn't worry. I mean, I think a Hoover at this stage is kind of the least of your worries, but and here's the thing too with Hoovers. We don't know what anybody else is going to do. So these people, they do tend to be very persistent because it's all about control. It's that domination over type mentality. And that mentality rears its ugly head in a wide variety of ways. So it's not like we can say, oh, yes, for the next, this will go on for the next 6 months, and then after that, it will stop, because we don't know. So all any of us can do when we've had an abusive ex in our life, or a problematic person in general, is to kind of emotionally prepare yourself for the possibility that, yes, he might show up out of the blue. He might create a fake Facebook account and contact you that way. He might do any number of things. So because of that, and because you don't want to live your life in fear, it can be helpful, and it is helpful to think about, okay, well, if that were to happen, how would I handle it? And then become emotionally prepared as possible. Okay, if he shows up at your work, you immediately go back inside and you call the police. If he shows up at your doorstep, you do not answer, you immediately call the police. If he I'd call the police anyhow, and I would at least talk to them. If you're not comfortable with making a restraining order, putting, the protection or order of protection against them, then I would say at a minimum, ask and see if the police officers can do some extra patrols. I'd give them the make and model of his car and say that this is what's going on, but that you're not comfortable making a report because you're afraid that's going to, if you are, I don't know. But if you're afraid that that's going to make things worse, then just say, I'm afraid to make a report, but is there any way you guys could do some extra patrols? I would keep I'd keep multiple forms of protection, mace, in your house, in your purse, in your car, kind of being situationally aware of when you're walking out to parking lots, when you're walking between cars. And this is not being hypervigilant. Like, this is something that you just have to do to be safe, because that's intimidating, scary, not okay behavior. So just kind of, and it doesn't have to be, again, this is not about like living your life in high alert. It's just about realizing, okay, there's this person who's very persistent. This is all about power and control. He's not letting go easily. And so I just need to kind of take these steps for the time being. If he creates, fake social media accounts and begins contacting you that way, well, then the next step might be to create a fake social media account so he can't find you online. You might have to change your phone number. And it might get to the point where you might want to even consider moving. So, you'll just have to kind of see. But in the meantime, do what you can. If he does Hoover, don't let it completely derail you. I would just make a note of it. You have a plan of action in your mind of what you're going to do if and when that were to happen. And then you just kind of move about your day. And if you feel that you need to call the police or file a order of protection, then, by all means do that. Okay, let's see here. Just got this phone. I even practiced this earlier. Why is this not doing that? That is frustrating. Oh, that's why. Oh, technology. Okay, let's see. Going through some questions here. Anahi asks, I'm writing my book. It's a memoir about my horrific childhood and my one and only ex, narcissist. I was 17. We were together for 8 years. Writing it is very cathartic and brutal. Should I use a pen name or a real name? I'm thinking about safety. That's a great question. At a minimum, you want to change his name and any possible details that could reveal him. So just because, he is abusive and, he did do all of these things, unfortunately, there's still, kind of the right to privacy, I guess I should say. So definitely kind of change things that could potentially reveal him, but it's okay to have a pen name. And especially if that makes you feel any better. So, and you could always consider choosing a pen name that's something, very inspirational and significant to you. So it doesn't have to be like you're hiding. It can just be kind of like the pen name could be like, this is the highest and best side of yourself. You see what I'm saying? Okay, let me scroll back here. Alyssa says, well, what about a person using their mental illness as an excuse for bad or abusive behavior? Well, okay, so that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. So if we have the line of, I expect to be treated with dignity and respect. And if it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter what another person's got going on. So if they have some mental illness going on, then, and if they're going to be in your life, it's completely reasonable to have the expectation of, these are my boundaries for everybody. And if they have behavior, they need to get their behavior under control to where it's appropriate, where they can treat other people with dignity and respect. I have seen over the years, many, many people, there's one person in particular that comes to mind who had multiple mental health challenges going on. And one of them was intermittent explosive disorder. So extreme outbursts of anger and rage. And of course, the guy had a traumatic, what you would expect, traumatic childhood. He had all these things going on. And it was tragic. But every single time he left the office, I always thought, I wonder when he's going to kill his wife. Because he would escalate to such an extent in front of us on a dime like that. And her thinking was, well, he's mentally ill. It's not fair for me to have standards for him. And that's dangerous thinking, A, and it's not the thinking of somebody who values themselves. And that might sound harsh as well, because when we tend to have that mindset, we think we're coming from a place of compassion, of, well, I just understand this person has been through so much, and I'm very compassionate. I could just never leave them, and I just need to be there for them. And anybody that would ever set a boundary with a person who's mentally ill or who's been through abuse, well, then that just makes them a bad person. And no, that's not the case. It's completely reasonable to have healthy boundaries at all time, period. Because the end result to you is going to be the same. Does it matter if this person has untreated mental illness? Does it matter if they have a brain injury? Does it matter if they are abusive? If they have a personality disorder? Does it matter if they are abusive? If they don't have a personality disorder, but they just become absolutely enraged every full moon? What if they have Alzheimer's? Does that matter then? I would encourage you to have none of that matter. It's the line. So kind of like what we were talking about earlier, which I thought was such a great example, that mandated reporting class was so perfect because it was exactly these kinds of things that people were asking of, well, okay, so what if somebody reports harm, abuse to themselves or to somebody else? When do I have to report? What if they are mentally ill? What if they are personality disordered? What if they have a brain injury? What if they have Alzheimer's? What if they're having a bad day? What if it's their culture, or they had a bad childhood, or they didn't really mean it? What if that's just how they joke? And it doesn't matter. The line is the line. So I just think that is very helpful to kind of realize that there are other contexts in life out there. It's appropriate and healthy to have that line. It doesn't matter what else is going on. Hopefully, that's if somebody has untreated mental illness, that they'll be able to get that effectively addressed for themselves and for everybody else that their behavior is potentially impacting. But all we can do is, if we have a loved one who's struggling with Alzheimer's, with, we're talking like a brain chemistry kind of issue, then we can, this is not having these boundaries isn't about punishing them. It's about being self-protective. So you can still love this person, but always within the context of healthy boundaries. So doing anything less isn't being loving or compassionate or good to yourself. Gaming Kid says, Dana, can you talk about how a narcissistic family dynamic affects sibling relationships? Thank you. Well, I would imagine it's different for every set of siblings and every family, because every family is different. But if you have, it's very common for a narcissistic parent to have a child. If there's multiple children, then one might be the scapegoat, one might be like the golden child. Some might just be flat out neglected. And it just depends. So what tends to happen is, because abusers tend to have targets, and they tend to target certain people more so than others for whatever reason. It's definitely not your fault. When a person's being abusive like that, it's everything to do with what's going on inside of them. So if they're targeting you, it's not because you're bad or you're wrong or there's some sort of issue. It's the issues within them. And there's sometimes, and that's the thing with abusers, it could be that there's qualities about you that remind them of themselves. It could be qualities that they wish they had. It could be qualities that they find fearful to have, that make them uncomfortable. It could be, so anyways, so within this dynamic, like with the siblings, it could be that if one sibling is being abused versus another, the other one who's not being abused is going to have a very different perspective of their parent and of their childhood. And because they're not on the receiving end of it, to them, it's not going to be a big deal. Just like any one of us, right? It's very difficult when you hear about something. So if somebody's telling you, oh yeah, this person, called me names. Well, or something traumatic happened. Oh, my next door neighbor got in a car accident. We might be like, oh man, that's awful. But we're not like, we can only have empathy to a certain point. We don't feel the full pain of that because we weren't in that event. Just like we can relate to somebody having a loved one who dies, there's that empathy of like, oh my gosh, this is so tragic and unexpected and my goodness. But of course, they feel that 100 times more than we do because they had the connection and they were on the receiving end of this tragedy. Same thing with abuse. So we can imagine, we can hear, we know what it feels like to be called names or to be made fun of or criticized or what have you, but it's 100 times more when you're on the receiving end of it. So that kind of stuff, when we start talking to other people about it, even siblings that were there, they're like, oh, that was so long ago. You just need to move on. You need to get over it. You need to forgive. You need to whatever. Well, it might be easy for them to say because they weren't on the receiving end of it. And even if they were on the receiving end of it, people process trauma differently. And, but regardless, it doesn't, just because even if they do seem to handle it, they have been to quote unquote move on. That doesn't mean that you need to do, that you're able to even do things the same way. Like everybody processes this stuff differently. Okay, let's see here. Jennifer asks, how do we reconcile, or what can we say to ourselves to be able to move on with our lives after narcissistic abuse? Well, I guess it depends on kind of what all you went through. So I am a big fan of trying to squeeze out anything and everything positive about anything positive that can come from a painful or negative situation. So for example, if we were in an abusive relationship, squeezing out the lesson of, you know what, I am never going to allow myself to be treated like that again. Or I realized through all of this that I have value and that I matter and that I will never be treated like this again. Or I found my self-worth. I had to find my self-worth because I was with somebody who didn't see it. So really digging deep and kind of finding out, okay, flip this around. Yes, there was all of this pain, there was all of this abuse, but on the other side of it, what could you dig out of this? And the more things that you can dig out that are positive, that you can use as building blocks for this next chapter in your life, the easier it is to kind of handle that pain, because we're able to take so much of that pain comes from being victimized, completely understandable and appropriate. If we can make some of what happened, not saying that there's anything good in what they did, don't get me wrong, but if we can take it and we can make good things come out of it, we can realize, you know what, this person mistreated me so horrifically that now I have so much more compassion for people that have been through something like this. Now I understand what it means to love myself. Now I understand what it means to respect myself. Now I understand what it feels like when I'm being mistreated. Like, these are all of the different things that I've learned. And the more that you can get out of that, it can really help to lessen the pain. And you'll have to continually remind yourself of this. Of, okay, but this is what I got out of it. Yes, but this is what I got out of it. And it's not to say that it's not okay to feel hurt and to feel angry and all of that. You definitely can. But I'm just saying, it does also help to hold on to the positive things that you can squeeze out. So that's what I did. And that's what really helped for me. And then I think just grace and compassion, just realizing, nobody gets involved in an abusive relationship intentionally. You did the best that you could with the information that you had at the time. That's all any of us can ever do. So, and that's the other thing, is it's so easy for any one of us to think that this would never happen to us, that certain situations would just never happen to us. Abusive relationships are one of them. Because we all think that we'd be able to spot an abusive person, and we're generally all wrong because they all come across differently and they abuse people in different ways. And It's not so easy to tell. And sometimes we have to kind of go around that mountain a few times and have a handful of of different types of abusive people in our life before we start seeing the bigger picture. At least that's what it took for me. So, the other people out there that are like, oh, that would never happen to me, or why didn't you just leave, or what have you? They just don't have any understanding. It doesn't mean that they have healthy boundaries or that this would never happen. It just means that it hasn't happened to them, potentially yet. It could down the road. Yeah. And Rob says, yeah, we fall into these traps because they don't all look like Charles Manson. Yes. Yes, I agree. And absolutely, Rob says, sometimes incredibly smart people are just as easily misled by abusive people. I would say it's people that are incredibly intelligent can be even more misled, because when we're being kind of led down this path, there's all of this confusion. There's things that don't add up. And so what do? We start rationalizing them. The more intelligent a person is, the better rationalizations they're going to come up with. So they can really get themselves all tangled up because they're coming up with a lot of really, really great rationalizations. And again, this stuff is not taught. And we all tend to kind of, those of us that have gotten caught up in it, we tend to think that there's something profoundly wrong with us because other people haven't had this happen to them. And that's not the case. Like sometimes, like I said, I was in this class yesterday for mandated reporters, and it was a bunch of mental health professionals. And I left really disturbed as to how many people saw no problem. They didn't realize that they were even justifying abuse. So every time that they were offering up, well, what if it's their culture? Well, what if it's, they had a bad day? Well, what if that's how they joke? Well, what if that's how they play? And it's like, yeah, okay. It's still not an excuse. Like, you can't punch your kid because in your culture, that's how you guys play around, or you verbally berate somebody because that's how you guys fight. Like, doesn't matter. The law says that's abuse. So like, period, end of story. It was really disturbing to see I'm glad that conversation was had, because, because we don't even realize half the time that we're justifying things that we shouldn't be justifying. So everything that we've all gone through, with all of the justifications, with all of the searching, with all of the kind of finding our way and stumbling and falling and getting caught up in that well-intended bad advice, that stuff's just out there. And I would say the vast majority of people out there are in that dysfunction. And you've heard me say this before, and I just strongly believe this, at least in this point in history right now, because there's such a lack of preventative education about this. Right now, the only way to develop this level of emotional awareness and self-awareness is to be burned by this fire. And then it's on the other side of it, because now we're so motivated. Our lives are so profoundly painful. And we're like, oh man, I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't function. I think I have PTSD. I'm terrified. I can't trust people. I don't want to leave the house. I'm having nightmares. Like, all of these things are going on. And so when we're in that level of pain, we're highly motivated to get that pain to stop. And that's how people tend to come across channels like this. And they start seeking out information online. And you're researching it. Why, how can I tell if my partner's cheating? How can I, what does it mean? What does it mean to be manipulative? What does it mean? How can I tell if it's them or me? Like, we're kind of on the periphery. We're searching out what we think will start giving us clarity. Then we stumble into stuff like this, and it's like, wow, okay, so much makes sense. And there's that first level of awareness of, oh, wow, I didn't realize this, that this was here, that this was going on. And then it kind of, then through time, you start seeing the bigger picture of, oh my gosh, I thought it was just this one person. Actually, there's been quite a few of these people in my life. And then down the road, as we kind of go through healing, then when we develop that level of awareness. And it starts with that question of, well, what can I do to stop attracting these people? Like some of the other really key entry points tends to be, how can I tell if they are a narcissist? That's a good entry point, because then it brings up the conversation of that label. While it can be very validating, it's more important that we're able to tell when we're being mistreated. It's not so we don't need to be able to diagnose whether or not a person's a narcissist. Because then that leads you off in the weeds anyhow, because you can ask 10 different mental health professionals and get 10 very different answers. So it's not about needing the diagnosis. It's about knowing when we're being mistreated. And then people will say, well, how can I be friends with an abusive ex? Or can I be friends with my ex who's a narcissist? And then that kind of opens the conversation of, well, why would you want to be friends with somebody who's abusive? How are you defining a friend? And then, the whole, am I attracting them? So there's these certain points that just, I call them minesweeper moments, where you remember that game, and you hit those certain blocks, and then you hit one by accident, and it's like, vroom, and this chunk of the board game clears. That's what I think about when I think of those moments. It just opens up so much. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Okay, Teravia. Yes. Okay. Yes. We ended on your question last week. So I had some clarification that I wanted to get from you. So last week you had said, how do we get unstuck? You said that you were stuck for the last 4 years. Can you tell me more about where are you feeling stuck? Are you feeling stuck in anger? Are you feeling stuck in still having feelings for this person? Are you feeling stuck in not being able to trust other people? All of the above. Where are you feeling stuck? And so while you're answering, let me address another question here in the chat. So Ricky's talking about, says they can smell the fumes of empathy exuding from every pore and hair follicle. Yes. So this is another thing that people tend to do, because they'll say, when we feel like we're attracting these people, very understandable that we would try to figure out, well, how can we not do that? What do we need to change about ourselves in order to stop attracting them? And so then people start doing all kinds of things. They start thinking like, okay, well, I read an article where narcissists that, abusive people and narcissists, that they can tell a potential target because if the target walks with their head down, or if the target smiles a lot, or if the target holds the door open for other people, that they're a potential target. And so then they're like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do all these things. So I'm going to, make sure that I walk with my head up, and I'm going to make sure to not smile, and I'm not going to hold doors open for any other people ever again. And then especially if they're continue to be targeted, then it's sort of like, okay, well, then what else do I need to change? And now we're grinding down parts of ourselves because we're trying to not be a target. And the reality is it truly is healthy boundaries. I can't even begin to express to you the relief that I got when I realized this, because I was doing those things. And so here's an example of this. So we had a security guard at my old work, and it started off, and again, this was the time when I had like 5 different just, like just people that wanted to use and abuse and exploit me come into my life in a row. And it was just a parade of pathology, and it was really discouraging. And so this one security guard, every morning I was very friendly. He was very friendly. It was all professional. I was not interested at all. So, and I didn't think he was interested at all. Like that was not even on my radar. And then he began kind of saying some stuff. It starting off with that kind of language of like, hey girl, like kind of getting overly casual. And I kind of let it slide because I thought, oh, that's just no big deal, whatever. And then it was kind of these little requests. So, for example, I used to bake like muffins or banana bread or whatever periodically and bring it to work. And he would say, oh, you should bring me some of this. And so then I did, because I was like, well, it's no big deal. I do this for other people. And anyways, and then it got to the point where he was kind of, he started to really flirt with me, which made me very uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do because he was at the front desk. I had to walk through there to see him every day. And then it was that sexual tone. Like, it wasn't like hey, I'm interested in getting to know you. Would you like to go out for coffee or dinner? It was like, hey girl, And it was just a total turnoff. Like, wow, you just think I'm going to hop in bed with you? I was just so offended. Then I find out that he's married. And so then I was so upset. Like, what signal am I giving off that you think that I would be open to that? I was just so disgusted by that. But so hindsight being what it is, looking back on it, it was all of these subtle little things. So even the new me now would definitely maintain that line, because let's just back it up. So he made some little comments, right? Again, totally not a big deal, totally easily justified him, but I wasn't okay with how I was being treated. This is where it goes back to. Doesn't matter if that's his culture, doesn't matter if he's just kind of flirty, doesn't matter if that's just his generation. It doesn't matter. It matters I was being treated in a way that I wasn't okay with. That's what matters. So the old me would let stuff like that slide, because I didn't like confrontation. I didn't want to make things weird. Even though he was making things weird, I didn't want that. So I just chose to avoid it, hoping, because that's what we do, right? If we're not being assertive, then all we have left is either hoping or coping. Hoping it'll change, and then coping with it if it doesn't. So I tolerated the stuff way past the point that I should have. And that was why. So it wasn't that I was just attracting all of these people. It was, I was not getting them out of my life soon enough, because they're, again, we can't control who we attract. Like, there's people out there, and, but yeah, holding the line at a little stuff, that makes if I could get one point across, that would be it. The really getting in tune with yourself to know when you're being treated in a way that's not comfortable for you, and to get really grounded in that. It does not matter why they're being that way. If it's not okay with you, then it's not okay with you. So, so yeah, knowing when you're being mistreated, and then knowing some strategies to handle that when it happens, because it's going to happen. it's going to continue, not to this level that brings us to such extremes as, a situation like this, but people are going to, because nobody else knows where your boundaries are. So they're going to, from time to time, step across a line. So then it's up to us to say something and to kind of correct that imbalance when it starts to happen. Okay. Division Hacker says, I am an autistic male and I had a pediatric traumatic brain injury. I am noticeably different. If you are different in a way that others notice, that it would be easy for them to exploit people that are prone to that. Yeah. And I think everybody has their vulnerabilities. It's all part of being human. It's more about us just being aware of what ours are. And our vulnerabilities are going to grow and change as we grow and change throughout life. So, yeah. Yeah, it can be a challenge for sure. Let's see here. Mariposa says, do you think there is a link between narcissistic abuse and homosexuality? I've noticed a trend in chats of people reporting that they felt their partner was hiding the fact that they are gay. That was my situation twice with the two in my life. I don't know if I would say that it was homosexuality so much as hypersexuality, that it was just, for sure, Jack just sleeping with anybody and everybody. Like that was, I've never even heard of anything to that extent. It was the most wild, ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life. But I think a lot of them, it does tend to be more hypersexuality because they don't bond to other people. So there is no sense of commitment or monogamy. It's whatever they want. And they tend to have more of a limited range of emotion because they don't, if a person's not connected to another person, they're not going to have kind of those higher, what we would consider like higher level range of emotions. Like there's not love. They tend to really struggle with joy, deep connection, these kinds of things. So a lot of times, it's thought that kind of more of like the narcissistic, sociopathic, exploitative, let's put it that way, exploitative, self-centered people, that they do tend to be more thrill-seeking. In part because they feel justified and entitled to be, but in part it's because that's a way for them to feel emotion, some sort of emotion. So it's a way for them to feel good, I guess. So their ways of feeling good are very different than a solutions-oriented person's way of feeling good. Because theirs is all about control and just kind of getting by. But I don't think it's, I don't think it's homosexuality. I think it's hypersexuality is what we tend to see. And that comes out, I think more often than not, there's no set sexual orientation there. Okay, let me see. I wanted to make sure if she is still in the chat. Oh no, did we lose? Okay, I'm going to keep going with these questions. If that one gal is here that was talking about her question from last week, please see if you can get my attention. Okay, I guess this is Taravia. Let me see. Taravia is, okay, she's not comfortable giving any information for her question. Okay, I don't even see her in the chat. Is she still in here? If that's the case, that's okay. If she's not comfortable giving more information, That's totally okay. Okay, I see her, but let's see. Okay, so let me answer it in a roundabout way. Taravia, how about we go about it that way? And if you want me to elaborate more in a certain area, then let me know. Okay. So when people tend to feel stuck after an abusive relationship, there tends to be a couple of different areas, and it could be a combination of all of the above. They tend to feel stuck in anger. They tend to feel stuck in not being able to trust other people or to be comfortable around other people. They might feel stuck in feeling disconnected from their own sexuality. Like there's just no interest for them to get out and date again or to be sexual with another person. They might feel stuck in continuing to think about their ex, positive or negative or both, all the hurtful things they did or all the good times. So all of that's normal. But like you said, you're like, okay, I've been in here for 4 years. How can I start moving forward? And let me keep the chat going so I can see if she... Okay, she says she's still here. Okay, she said, well, just been stuck. Well, are we talking if we're talking all of the above, a lot of it's working through these emotions. And some of this stuff just takes time. So if it's trust, having difficult time trusting other people. And so let me backtrack a little bit. You're saying it's a simple question. How do I just get unstuck if I've been stuck for so long? While the question is a simple one, the answer is not. It's very multifaceted, and that's why we're stuck, because it's not a simple thing. So, with building trust with other people, a lot of this comes from going slow with meeting new people, realizing that trust is something that's earned. It's not freely given, that it's okay and appropriate for you to not trust new people right away, and to kind of observe their behavior and see over a period of time if they are treating you appropriately, if they're treating other people appropriately, they're following through on their word, they're treating you and other people around them with dignity and respect. So appropriate behavior is how trust is earned. With if kind of reconnecting with sexuality is something that's there. A lot of this, I guess what helped me and what has helped other people is to kind of make the shift of that your sexuality is about you. It's not about somebody else. And so, okay, she just wants to have a quality of life like before, not about dating. Okay. So so then building up a quality of life. So here's the thing with healing. Healing is never about going back to the way we were. And sometimes just knowing that can kind of help set a person free. Because if we're using the old version of us as that line of feeling, if we're going to feel profoundly broken because we're not like the way we used to be, then we're going to be very upset. Because that's where life is never about going backwards. It's always about going forwards. But the good news in that is the going forwards part. So a lot of it is a conscious effort of, okay, so now that I'm moving forward, what do I want to have in my life? I've got to be able to rebuild it. There's experiences that have happened to me that have shaped me. There's emotions to the degree that I haven't experienced, probably I haven't experienced before. There's changes that have happened, but this doesn't mean that you're broken. And it's going to mean that you're going to have to be, there's going to be some work that's going to have to be done as far as like working through some of these emotions. But a lot of it's just this conscious effort of, okay, what do you want to have in this next chapter of your life? I'm a big fan of meetup groups, meetup.com, being intentional about, okay, you know what? Yeah, this is what I want in my life. And thinking about, okay, what did you like? Okay. She's saying, I have no more trust in people. I have no more trust in men. I just want a life where I can try to talk to people again. Yep. And TJ says, I understand fully. And I do too. Completely relate. And I will say for me, it was also a couple years before I got to that place because I didn't know how to. Generally, when we have trouble trusting other people, it's in large part because we don't know how to keep ourselves safe. And we're so terrified of being hurt like that again. And so the way to start being around other people and to the point where you can start becoming comfortable again, it's going to be a little bit at a time. And this is why another reason I'm a big fan of meetup groups, because it's about the most low stakes environment out there. So if you can find, and it's great practice. So if you can find a group or multiple groups that seem interesting to you, and then go to an event and then decide, you know what, you can leave anytime. You don't need to talk to anybody there at all, but you're in charge. You set the pace. So you leave when you want to leave, you talk to who you want to talk to. If they ask you questions, you only have to answer the questions that you're comfortable answering. And you're just, the whole process is just kind of getting comfortable around new people again. So it takes practice. There is no magic phrase that I could say other than it takes practice. You're in charge, you're in control, you set the pace, tuning inward when something's not comfortable for you, and realizing that you are in control. It's okay. It's okay for you to get up and leave. It's okay. You don't need to entertain the nonsense of other people. You don't need to be engaged in conversations that you don't want to have. None of that. Okay, let's see here. So, case of love, let's see. Well, I hear you too with that, Teravia. She says, I'm not a people person. I don't think I could do people anymore. I like being by myself now. And that's kind of the added challenge. If we're already kind of an introvert and then something traumatic happens, it can be very easy to just be like, you know what, I'm totally fine staying inside. And like, I noticed the other day, I had this realization of I talk more on Wednesday night than I do probably throughout the rest of the week combined. And I'm fine with that. And I am a homebody. So I can relate to that. But back to the whole trust thing, a lot of this, it is a skill, and it is something that even if you go to the grocery store, sometimes practicing some of these skills of just acknowledging that you are in charge, and like with another person, how close they stand to you, or kind of, if they want to have a brief conversation or what have you. But I don't know. It might be worth looking into some meetup groups. Because sometimes there's groups that are not terribly social. That might be more like going to a movie or game night or, things like that. So you never know. You never know if there's something out there that you might enjoy. And therapy too can sometimes help, especially if you can find a good trauma therapist. Oftentimes, if you contact a local domestic violence shelter and let them know that you are in an abusive relationship and that you're really struggling, and can they recommend any therapists? If money is an issue, do they have any therapists that offer free sessions? Do they have a domestic violence group that you could go to? Do any of the therapists work on a sliding scale? If you have insurance, oftentimes insurance will cover, depending, at a minimum 8 therapy sessions. So that might be something to look into as well. But yeah, okay, so Case of Love was talking about reconnecting with sexuality. Yeah, I think, one of the biggest shifts, I think, for a lot of people is realizing that you own your sexuality. And so we don't need to wait for a relationship or another person to feel sexy. I think so oftentimes we do that. We're like, okay, well, I've got this sexy lingerie that I'm going to wear for this person. But if you wear that sexy lingerie or whatever makes you feel confident or sexy, if you're wearing that for you and you view it as, I'm wearing this for me, and you just get to experience it. I know it sounds really arrogant and maybe kind of over the top, but seriously, it's sort of like, you know what? I'm going to wear this anyhow. I'm not waiting for special occasions. I'm just going to wear this because I like to wear this. And, it's great that you like it. And maybe I'll wear it even more if you like it, but it's by and large for me. And that's a great way. And just reconnecting with your body that way, allowing yourself to feel sexy, realizing that you control that, and that that you own that. You own your sexuality, you own your body, and you're getting more in tune with when you're being mistreated, and that it's okay for you to walk away. Okay, Jack says, I hope this doesn't sound weird, but me too. My drive just recently got crushed. I think this happens when anybody goes through something traumatic. These kind of, our brains just tend to downshift into survival mode, and fun, connection, sex, these kinds of things are just not on our radar for quite a while, because we just, it's like if you've ever seen a dog that doesn't feel well, what do? They go crawl under the deck, right? Or they go into the corner of the yard, or they go hide under a bush. They just want to be alone because they don't feel well, and they just don't want to be around. They just don't want to be around other animals. They don't want to be around people. People are very much the same way. We just tend to want to go be alone and, kind of hole up in our room and get under the covers and just kind of lick our wounds and work towards recovering and not deal with anything else. Dwayne says, do these shelters help men? Most shelters do not, as far as I'm aware of. There might be one or two out there, but by and large, they're for women. And there's, I think there's many different reasons for that. And, and maybe that'll change in the next 10 years or so as kind of more awareness happens. Kevin says, my libido never came back and it's been years. The doctor just shrugged. So I don't think it comes back. I think we have to kind of, how do you say this? I think you have to make a concerted effort to bring it back. And so it's, okay, I'm just going to get into this, okay? So it truly is, it's for women, I'm sure men have their own routine, but like for women, it's allowing yourself to feel comfortable in your own skin and getting comfortable in your own body and just reconnecting with your sexuality is what I was saying. With men, it's the same, right? So you're even if you're not feeling like it, and again, I'm sorry, I apologize. This is all too much information, but for me, I definitely went through that. But for me, I was so angry that I felt so numb and so just detached like that I just thought, no, I'm not. He is not going to take that. Like I just got determined. I just got angry and I got determined, and it was sort of like, no, you don't get that. So, really spending time with myself and, allowing myself to feel sexy and just reconnecting with touch and all of that and being like, this is for me. This is not for, I'm not going to wait until I feel sexy or sensual to feel this way. Well, make it happen. And then when you do reconnect with that, the sex drive does tend to come back. Okay. Let's see here. Let me scroll through these questions here. That's a great point. Rob says, identifying with being compassionate can lead to a lot of self-abuse. How about be compassionate to the pain, whatever a person has caused to you, and be kind to your own injury? Yeah, self-compassion is a very big thing. Very big thing. Damara says, how can I break this love addiction I feel towards him? Well, there's a couple of things you can do. I'm a big fan of writing out the like every painful thing that he's done, writing this out in a bullet point format. So, because when we tend to have this feeling of this love addiction, it's because we're still kind of getting pulled back in to all of the good times or the chemistry that was there. So yes, part of it is, kind of trauma bonds and all of that. That's definitely very real. But a great way to work towards breaking that is to see this person clearly. So to write out all of the painful things. He lied about he said he had a dog. He doesn't have a dog. He lied about what he did for, I don't know. He said he was in the army when he really wasn't. He cheated, He flirted with the waitress. He yelled at me and called me a name. He used my brother's death against me. He did all of these really horrible, painful things. And so when you start feeling that pull to go back and read that list, and hopefully it'll start snapping you awake, So you're not sliding into the nostalgia of it all. And then the other big part of it is to get busy kind of filling that void. I've probably heard the saying, the universe hates a vacuum. Like if we get rid of something in our life, and if we don't replace it with something new, then we just have this void. It's sort of like if you quit drinking alcohol and you don't substitute anything in with that, and then you feel it. You're just sitting there like, okay, well then now what? Like it's, Friday night and I used to go out drinking with my friends and now I don't drink anymore. So you're just sitting on the couch twiddling your thumbs. And it's difficult for a person to stay sober or to quit smoking, to do any new thing if they haven't replaced the old habit with something new. So getting out there, connection is a very big part of healing. It can be incredibly helpful just to be, meetup.com, staying busy, filling up your schedule, not staying busy because you're trying to avoid the pain, but keeping yourself preoccupied to kind of fill that void. And it also helps because it reminds yourself of there's life after this. Because if we are sitting at home thinking like, okay, well, I'm feeling profoundly broken. And if we're sitting there waiting until we feel fully healed, especially if we think that fully healed is the way that we were, if we're sitting at home waiting to feel like how we used to feel, then we're going to be sitting there the rest of our life. So healing is about moving forward, and it's about rebuilding our lives in a very intentional way and full of as many things that, spark joy and bring you love as humanly possible. Things that are nourishing to you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Things that are nourishing to you. Move in that direction. Because here's the other thing with that. The more things that you do that are nourishing, the more comfortable you get in that zone of, you get used to feeling good. And so then the thought of being around anything bad totally loses its appeal. It's sort of like, when you eat clean, and you're just, you're like fruits and vegetables and like just, you just cut back on all of the junk and you feel amazing. And then you get to a place where like the thought of certain foods, like really greasy, heavy food, just completely loses its appeal. It's the same thing with people. When you get used to being around people and having hobbies and stuff that's nourishing, you don't want anything else. Okay, let's see here. Taradia says, I believe because I was in love with a narcissist that I don't have a sex drive anymore. And that's fine with me because he was the last man I was going to be with anyway. Well, I think losing our sex drive after abuse is very, very common. I don't know, frankly, I don't know if I've ever come across a person where they haven't. So like I was saying, I think, just like a dog that doesn't feel well, I think it's mammals, I guess in general, when we experience pain, we do tend to just want to be left alone. And we do kind of, dogs go crawl under the deck. We tend to go crawl under the covers of our bed. And we just want to be alone until we start feeling better. And that's totally okay. But I said at the same time, it's okay, but I would encourage you. And I know even though you don't want to, sometimes it can be helpful to just say, okay, you know what? I am going to go out. This one meetup group is they're doing something. They're having a movie night or whatever you might be into. I'm going to go for an hour or 2 hours and then I'm going to come home. Just just to get out, just to start kind of building up a social circle and just having some activity in your life. It's really, truly, it's amazing what that can do, especially if you, go to some meetup groups that are enjoyable, and you just never know, you might meet some really great people there. But I mean, it is the general public, so it's a mixed bag, but you might, like, you don't know, but you might end up meeting some really great people there. Okay. Let's see. The division hacker says, what happened? Why you have these emotions? For example, for me, I have a fixation with domestic violence. I research and study it with the goal of helping. It's become a literal fixation. Well, I can relate. I can relate to that. I would say that I'm in the same boat. I think whenever we have something that's caused us a significant amount of pain in our life, we spend time trying to figure it out. So my brother has fibromyalgia. He spent, still, I'm sure, but there was a good chunk of his life for probably 15 years where he was obsessive. He read everything he possibly could. He went to all different kinds of treatments. He knows everything about fibromyalgia because it was, he was in a lot of pain and he was really motivated to kind of figure it out. And it's just, if you have Crohn's disease, it's the same thing. You go through an abusive relationship, it's oftentimes the same thing because we're in a lot of pain. We're motivated to get out of that pain. And the more we're able to educate ourselves about it, the more clarity we start to get. And then it tends to be like pulling a string on a sweater. So then we start to kind of see, oh my gosh, I thought, I was kind of looking for certain answers that were over here. And I somehow like this other door opened and now I'm going this way. And it's just so fascinating because it's all kind of psychology and you start seeing the world completely differently. You're like, wow, I feel like I understand other people's behavior so much better. I feel like I'm starting to understand my own behavior so much better. And, if you're even remotely interested in any of that, then it's just fascinating. So, I mean, yeah, I feel the same. To me, it never gets old. I'm just absolutely fascinated with understanding like why do we all do what we do, and kind of what would help to what pieces need to be put together and potentially in what order to be able to help people to gain the understandings that they need to be able to move forward in healing. That's kind of my bend on things. And so, yeah, I get it. I think most of us here do. Let's see here. Yeah, TJ is saying, I am studying and working on another degree in psychology, so maybe I can help others that are dealing with the same thing. Yeah. And, I think that's what most of us do, right? Again, my brother had a support, it was an online support group of sorts for fibromyalgia. We tend to do this because you know what it's like. You've gone through it and you don't want, that other people are going through it too. And especially when you've gotten to a place where you start feeling like you do have some answers or that you can provide validation and clarity to somebody else, you just kind of feel compelled to be like, okay, there's no need. Like I've already wandered in the desert for 10 years. Nobody else needs to go through this. So while I might not have all of the answers that you need, there's probably probably have a lot of the same questions. And so here's what I've learned. Take this for what it's worth. Hold on to what helps. Let the rest go. You know? Let's see. Let me scroll. Oh, well, thank you, Anime. She says, you spark joy, Dana. I could listen to your voice for hours. It's so soothing. And what you say is always so validating, educational, and reassuring. Well, thank you so much. That just makes my day. I am glad that I can help with all of that. Let's see. Oh, do I have it on this computer? I might not. It might be on my laptop. Let me see. Yeah, it's on my laptop, which is downstairs. I got one of the best YouTube comments the other day. It was so just made my heart smile so big. I'll have to read it for you guys next week. It was just so cool. It was from a guy who had come on here, and he was basically looking to troll the channel and had made some really harsh criticisms. And he ended up sticking around, and he said he'd never even been in an abusive relationship. He just kind of stumbled his way in here, and he just, like I said, he was going to just throw out some kind of mean comments and then upset people and then leave. And then he wasn't getting that reaction. And I had actually addressed his question. And so, but he ended up staying, and he ended up really getting into all of this stuff and learning about all of boundaries and standards and deal breakers, and, knowing when you're being mistreated and all of this stuff. And it was just the best comment. And he was like, my life has just radically changed for the better. And that just never know when you say things, who is listening. And one of my big takeaways from that comment was just that of like, I remember that whole interaction, and thankfully, I handled it that way. And so I guess it just made me realize, okay, the importance of really being intentional about how I respond to people, because you just never know. So, okay, let me scroll down. Oh, I'm going to check my phone and see. Okay, hold on. Technology. That's a good question. Case of Love says, is it possible for narcissists to create boundaries? Not healthy ones. So whenever a person, and this is what can be so crazy making for people that are on the receiving end of this, is they might think because they don't have a healthy understanding of like kind of everything themselves, because they're lacking that emotional maturity and that ability to understand that it's kind of quality relationships. I like this way, that quality relationships involve being team oriented, because they lack that. And instead they're very domination driven. It's all about them all of the time. They've got to get their way. Anytime that we set a boundary, we assert ourselves, we show any individuality, they have a problem with that. So anytime you tell them no, anytime they don't get their way, they get deeply offended. And then they'll start accusing you of being abusive and being a narcissist and being manipulative. And if a person doesn't know any better, and most people don't, then it gets really confusing of like, well, maybe I am the problem. And that's, people get all kinds of tangled up in that spider's web because they're so convincing. And there's always there can be that nugget of truth in it, right? So it's sort of like, well, if sometimes it's they'll just point out every single thing about you that they have an issue with. And then they have, of course, they have some sort of justification for it. Well, I don't think that you should major, you shouldn't be a writer. You shouldn't be a writer because you're never going to make a living at that. And, you're not that good of a writer anyhow. Like things like that. Or, you shouldn't go to culinary school because you just can't cook and everything that you make is garbage. And so don't even try. Or, you shouldn't play the guitar, or they don't like what political party you're affiliated with, or what religion you are, or what have you. And so a person that's more team oriented, they see differences in other people. We might not even we probably don't half the time like differences that we see in other people, but we're still able to give them space to be themselves. So we realize, you don't need to think exactly like me, right? Like you don't need to be everything that I am. And you don't need to be everything that I want you to be. Like you are you, I am me, and that's okay. But for narcissists, they don't have that. It's that, that Highlander mentality of there can be only one. So the potential for any healthy boundaries is not possible because they don't have a healthy understanding of other people in general. And a person needs that in order to have functional boundaries. Especially, the biggest problem with narcissists, it's that containment boundary. So whereas a person that's more team-oriented or solutions-oriented, we're able to slow things down and filter what we're saying and understanding that the potential impact that it might have. Whereas, they just say whatever and feel entitled to. But as far as setting boundaries with a narcissist, it depends on to the degree. If you ever feel like you're in physical danger or you feel afraid of somebody, that's really a big sign to disengage. And that's not when you want to be setting boundaries, because that kind of stuff just adds fuel to the fire. So any communication, conflict resolution strategies that work for quote unquote normal people do not apply when you're dealing with an abusive person. It's going to make things worse, not better. So the only thing that people like that understand are consequences. That's it. So it generally has to mean getting distance from them, because they'll promise the change. They might even beg for change. They might continue to blame you. They might spin it all kinds of twisted ways. And it's just, there's no working with that. Yeah, Taravia says, okay, Dana, you just said everything that my narcissist did. He threw my Persian race. He told me I couldn't cook. The list goes on and on. None of that could really stop me. I just wanted to understand, why do they throw other people's stuff away if they don't care? Because it's about control. At the end of the day, when you've got a person who they're showing you through their behavior that it's all about them all of the time, they have that domination-driven mentality, which is it's all about power and control. So it's the same thing, and that's what abuse stems from. That's how abuse happens, is it stems from power and control, that complete lack of respect for other people, and that entitlement of, I don't like it, therefore it's not going to happen. I don't like what you're cooking. I'm just going to throw everything away. I don't like these certain outfits. Well, I'm going to cut them up. Or I'm going to tell you, you can't wear these. And then they might even say this stuff happens like, it's just comments here and there, and it just slowly erodes another person. And oftentimes we don't realize it when it's happening. So they might say something like, well, you know what? I don't like that lipstick. I think it makes you look like a prostitute or a stripper. I think it makes you look like a stripper. And I don't like you wearing it. And what are you doing? You're wearing that color because you're trying to pick up other men. Why are you dressing like that? That doesn't even look good on you. You're too old. You're too old to wear a lipstick color like that. And those kind of comments can make a person like, well, maybe, is this too sexy? And does this make me, am I too old to wear this color? And I don't know. And no, I don't want my partner to think I'm cheating. I guess not like that invested in this lipstick. If they hate it that much, I just won't wear it. And it's all of these little compromises. And that's how we start kind of compromising ourselves away, not realizing it. We just think, hey, we're being solutions oriented. We're trying to work. Relationships take work, right? So I'm going to start making these little sacrifices because I want to keep the peace in our relationship, and then not realizing what's happening in the process. Yeah. And TJ saying, and yeah, they make fun of clothing, hairstyles, almost anything. And men go through this too. So it's just in a different way, but it's the same kind of thing. And then men have, this stuff is difficult for anybody to see. Let me just say that first and foremost. I think men have the added challenge, men that are being abused, because it's still, abuse in general is still seen as a women's issue. And it's not, it's an issue. It happens to all people from all walks of life. It happens to animals. Like, it's just, abuse is an issue. So it's important that we're able to see it for what it is, because it can be easy to justify and to think, oh, well, like I was saying in that class, oh, maybe that's their culture. Maybe that's how they just joke like that. Maybe that's, this, that, and the other, but it's, not okay. It's not okay for people to be mistreated. Period. Any people. Okay, let's see. Let me. So yeah, Kim, that's a great point. And she says, yeah, the frog analogy, that water getting hotter and hotter. Yeah. And so for you guys that haven't heard that analogy, it's basically, it's how do you boil a frog? And the answer is you put it in a pot full of lukewarm water, and then you slowly turn up the heat. The reason being, if you were to throw a frog in hot water, it's going to jump out right away. So if you want to boil it, you got to do it so slowly that it doesn't realize that it's happening. And, sometimes abusers are that intentional and that malicious. But I think a lot of times the water turning, the heat being turned up, it's more so that they tend to get more and more comfortable in the relationship. So I don't think it's like, they're like, okay, well, now I've really got this person roped in. Now I'm going to really amp things up. I think it's more of they start getting comfortable, and they become more comfortable with just asserting, quote unquote, asserting their opinions on things. And they feel more entitled to just take more control over that other person, because there's more of, there's more time that's gone by. Oh, good. Colleen, thank you. Says, Dana, I just want to thank you for all your help in the last year. It's been 4 months with complete no contact, and I feel so much better. Well, good. I'm glad. Yay for you. 4 months is huge, and it's great that you're feeling so much better. I'd say the hands down, the first couple of months are the hardest. First 6 months in general, I would say, are the hardest. So if you're 4 months out and you're feeling so much better, then that's just awesome. Let's see here. Yeah, and Jennifer was saying they don't care about us. They care about the control. And those things, they can be very easy to get confused because, like you were saying earlier, like you have to be somewhat emotionally invested to care. At least we would be, right? If you don't care, then you don't mess with something. But for them, it's all about control. This is why their behavior can be so erratic and just not make sense to us. They can do things like they might be cheating on you with 10 different people. They leave you, and then you're just devastated. They even go on and they get married, and then they're still telling you no. They're threatening any person that you date. They're still driving past your house. They're telling you that you belong to them, even though they are now remarried. It's not love, it's control. It's like a little kid saying, oh, there's my earring. It's like a little kid who has a toy, and if they don't want to play with it anymore, they don't care. But if another little kid comes along and wants to play with it, then they get upset. It's that level of emotional maturity, but they don't see it because they have a very just dysfunctional view of the world and of other people. Okay, let's see. Dennis says, how can they just lie to your face and continue like everything is normal? Do they ever feel remorse for their actions? No, generally not. And here's why. So whenever any of us feel justified in the action that we take, we won't feel remorse. So if you really feel like you're doing the right thing, you don't feel bad about it. Right? It's the exact same thing for them. And this is one of the reasons too why you see a lot of bizarre behavior from them. You see what we could probably best describe as mental gymnastics, where they start rewriting reality. And that's wild to see when that starts happening. When they either pick a fight with, this is a very common one, they might pick a fight with you over nothing, only to break up. And then you're so confused. And then they come back 2 or 3 days later, and then you find out they've been cheating the whole time. But in their mind, it was like, well, we were broken up at the time. But the reality is, well, actually, no, they picked a fight over nothing because they wanted to break up, because they wanted to cheat, and they didn't want to feel guilty about it. That's what happened. And so now, because they've done enough of these mental gymnastics, they don't feel guilty for cheating because in their mind, you guys weren't together. They will, it just goes on and on. Here's an example of a justification, a situation and a justification that's not even in reality. Because sometimes we get stuff that's like, whoa, where did that come from? Let's say, just for the sake of simplicity, switch the genders. A couple, okay, man and woman are together. They're in the mall, and the woman says, "Oh, you know what? This shirt is really great. I think it would look really nice on you. You should buy it." And if you're dealing with an abusive person who's kind of more on the paranoid and delusional side, they might work up this whole story in their head where they're like, she wants me to wear this shirt because this shirt's ugly. I don't like this shirt. She wants me to wear this shirt because it's going to make me look stupid. And then people are going to make fun of me. She wants people to make fun of me. Well, that bitch, I'm going to teach her. She thinks she can get away with this. Well, she's got another thing coming. And then you get hit, or you get yelled at, or you get cussed out, and you have no idea why. And then they start accusing you of all of these things. And you're like, what are you talking about? And they have worked up this whole story in their head. That's the kind of stuff when it's so extreme like that, that it is not even in reality, that they are making connections that are not there. That's dangerous, especially if they feel justified in being physically abusive. You can't, there's no reasoning with somebody like that. So, or when they're projecting. I think we've all maybe experienced that. Well, they'll say things like, they start accusing you of doing things that they're doing. Oh, you're thinking of leaving me. Are you cheating on me? I bet you're cheating on me. Where were you? Why were you late? Why is your hair, why does it look messy? What's going on? I need to go through all of your clothes. I'm going to start doing the laundry. You can't be trusted. I want you home between this hour and this hour. And then it's sort of like, where is all of this stuff coming from? And then you kind of find out, oh my gosh, especially when you find out if you've been walking on eggshells and trying to prove to this other person that that you're not cheating on them, that you would never cheat on them, that you're trying to make them feel okay and feel safe and secure. And then you find out, oh my God, they've been cheating on me this whole time. Like, that's insane. Where is this coming from? And that's just them projecting, and them rewriting reality. You can't reason with stuff like this. Yeah. And I'm so sorry, Gigi. That's horrible and infuriating all in one. She says, mine admitted to sexually abusing our daughter, yet he blames me for keeping supervised visits and no overnights with him and the kids, but he's the victim. Yeah, that's that kind of stuff. There's no accountability. They are so far away from reality. It's not, you're screaming into the wind. They're just not going to hear you. So when they're able, they don't understand appropriate behavior. They're not in reality, and they're a million miles away from understanding what they did was wrong. At that point, you just have to throw up your hands in the air and just get far away from them, because it's going to happen again, because they don't understand what they did was wrong. And because when they rewrite reality like that, and they're able to kind of do this, yeah, but still, over major stuff like that. Well, yeah, I did these horrible things. Yeah, but still. But like, you're not letting me do this. And it's like, I cannot believe that you are glossing over these horrific things that you've done and making yourself a victim of me. How did we get here? This is awful. Yeah, I hope. I hope that you're able to keep your children far away from him. He really. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's just so sick and so twisted. Yeah. She says, yeah, he's only a victim of his own circumstances. Yep. But they just don't get it and just twist everything around. It's like, did you guys follow that whole Jussie Smollett story? And the guy that had said that there had been this hate crime committed on him, and and it turns out he'd actually paid these two guys, and it was all this big attempt for him to get sympathy. And I guess, I don't know, there might've been concern. He was trying to get popularity and potentially kind of keep his job, I guess. There was concern about that. Well, anyways, he just got, what is the word? Acquitted? No. Ooh, sound is terrible. They just released him. So Chicago, he had a $10,000 bail that they kept, and they basically let him go with time being served and everything. And what's so infuriating about this is he has zero, like -10 accountability. Like, he won't admit to it. And even though they could not have any more evidence than they do, he won't admit to it. He still insists that he's a victim of a hate crime and that he's the victim in all of this. And his actions have hurt so many. I don't think you could have a person. He had the whole world angry with him. His actions in one fell swoop angered gay people, straight people, Republicans, Democrats, Black people, and white people. Like, all at once, across the board, he just offended all of these people with his actions. And he still has no accountability, even after getting pressure from the world, like from everybody that was like, man, you weaponized something that should never have been weaponized. And it's just awful. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. We'll do one more question and then we'll go into our guided meditation for the night. Yeah, Jennifer was saying her father sexually abused her for 8 years. He would never admit to her if what he did was wrong until he came out about it later. He first wanted me to lie and said that I made it up for attention. But my ex heard him say that and was livid. So now he blames it on sex addiction, as if he's the victim of sex addiction and he can't understand how I would be effective. Yeah, that's horrific. And I don't even have the words for it. Outrageous, egregious behavior. So over the top and so not okay. And that's one of the many reasons I have issues with sex addiction is, Dr. George Simon, I think makes the very valid distinction between, there's one thing having to do with when we're talking about behavior, when you're talking about personality disordered kind of stuff, and then you're talking about character disturbed. And that level of hurt and harm to another person where there's no moral compass and there's no accountability, that's on that character disturbed side of the spectrum. And it doesn't matter here's the thing, any of us can be addicted to anything. Exercise, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, marijuana. I am literally addicted to soda water. It's ridiculous. Like cigarettes, you name it. Just because we can have an addiction for something doesn't make that an excuse for behavior. Period. End of story. And there's a lot of people out there that have a sex addiction that don't go around causing such horrific pain to their family. So to me, it's not an excuse. And I get livid when I hear anybody, especially anybody in the mental health community, treat it as an excuse or justification. Not okay. Not okay. So it's, you've got an addiction. Well, get in line. So do a lot of people. That doesn't it doesn't make, it's sort of like saying like, well, I've got a gambling addiction. That's why I robbed a bank. I go, well, there's a line. You robbed the bank. You made that decision. Steve says, oh my God, I am addicted to soda water. Joe says, I am a soda water addict too. Holy crap, must be an empath thing. I don't know what it is, but it's embarrassing. Let me tell you the level of my soda water addiction, okay? I get the largest bottles they have. I go through probably 3 of these a day. And I keep in my car, because I drink so many of them, I have my recycling. So I have 2 bags in the back seat of my car, one for Kroger and one for Meijer. And then when I'm done, it's like the equivalent. People will joke about alcoholics. They have all these beer cans in the back seat. I have soda water bottles. And I fill up a whole IKEA bag within a week. And then I go take it to Kroger, take the recycling, and then get more. I was thinking about it the other day. This is terrible. I drink probably a solid $20 worth of soda water a week. That's ridiculous. And I get angry and antsy when I don't have it. And I panicky. It's a problem. There are worse things, that I could be addicted to, but it's very real. Steve says, yep, the same. Says, I buy it by the case. Yeah, Maura says, I crack soda water like it's a beer after work. Happy Camper's drinking it right now. Yeah, it's terrible. Marina says you need a soda stream to make your own. So I actually had bought one of those, and it wasn't very good. And it just wasn't as carbonated, but this would be my dream, right? So if I had the money to do this, I would totally have in the room, I guess is the bigger thing, our kitchen's small. If I had the room and the money, I would totally get like a kegerator, but just for soda water. And it would just be the CO2 tanks, and it would be my own soda fountain, because all of the plastic, even though I recycle, it still gives me anxiety. It's still just so much waste. It bothers me. So yeah, I would love to have my own CO2 kegerator soda water thing. It's old. Yeah, Rob says, Dana, soda water fountain setup exists, LOL. Yes, it's more of an issue. There's no room in the kitchen, but I could look into one in the basement. I could see, right? I could find out about getting a kegerator. That's so terrible. It would seriously probably be cheaper for me to spend like $500 on a kegerator for soda water than it is. That would pay for itself in like 6 months. It's ridiculous. First world problems. But yeah. Rob says, yeah. Okay, so if I end up doing that, I will definitely take pictures and let you guys know. People always laugh when they get in my car, because I had everybody, I bring soda water with me. And you've ever had friends that bring hot sauce with them to restaurants? Because I have. Anyways, I bring soda water, and I know every single restaurant in town that has it. And I prefer to go to those places. It's like I said, it's a legitimate problem. But yeah, in the back of my car, there's always all of these bottles. And I just tell people to not judge and to get over it, because they're just going to be there all the time. Yeah, Brianna says, oh my gosh, this is hilarious that we all seem to love soda water so much. Yes, I agree. Not too many people do. Lauren says, I'm going to have to try soda water now. Lauren, I will warn you, it is an acquired taste. And the first time you drink it, it tastes like, Travis said, it tastes like TV static. So it's true. It tastes like sand. It really just this very dry, taste, but with a little bit of lime. And if it's really cold, it's really good. Brianna says, have you ever tried Trader Joe's sparkling water? No, I don't think so. We don't have a Trader Joe's around here. I wish we did. The nearest one is in about like an hour away. Yeah, Tyler says some brands are better than others. He says, I like Target brand more than LaCroix. I'm going to give him a plug here. Kroger, their brand is, now I consider myself a soda water connoisseur. Their brand is fantastic. It is very highly carbonated and stays carbonated till the last drop. So try the Kroger brand if you are a connoisseur like me. Mariposa's laughing at it tastes like TV static. Yeah. If you've ever had it, it's like the most accurate description. Steve says, oh, Dana is fancy. Yeah. Oh, gosh. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so I guess let's go into, real quick. Believe in Love says, hello, Dana. I just purchased your 3-year journal. I'm so excited. I didn't know you made this. Very cool. I am so glad that I'm excited that you're so excited. I really hope that you enjoy it. You'll have to let me know. Yeah, I made a couple of journals last year, and yeah, I really like them too. I'd like to be able, I think one of the plans down the road is to take those questions and do something. I don't know necessarily what, like make it into a card game or possibly some sort of app, because they're really great questions, especially for kids, just getting kids talking. Because every question's different, and they're all geared to kind of help gain insight into like what's going on. But it's also a great sharing thing too. So yeah, people are saying, Dana, your journal. Rich says, hey, Dana, I wanted to jump in earlier, but I'm here now. Welcome. I have one right. Let me grab it. Hold on. Okay. So I have, this one is from the house fire. I need to get new copies. This one has soot all over it, but yours won't. I promise your book won't be covered in soot. It's called the Insight Journal. It's a 3-year journal, and if you go on Amazon and look up my name, Dana Morningstar, you'll see all of the different books that I have out. So this one, there's a 3-year version of this, and then there's a 1-year version of this, and the only difference is the number of years. So what it is, if you've never heard of a 3-year journal, it's such a fun concept. So you only get a certain amount of space. Let's see if you can see this. A certain amount of space. So the page is divided into thirds, basically. And so as you just start the journal on whatever day it is. So you open the book to today's date, and then it'll ask you a question, and then you only have about 4 lines to write your answer. And if you're a journaler, that can seem like not enough, but it is. And so then it takes the pressure off, and it really makes you focus on what the answer to that question is. And so then as you go through, I didn't think I would like the shorter format because I tend to write extensively when I do journal, but I really like it. It's fun. And so then as you go through, then you circle around for the next year, and then you can see your answers. And because you're answering the same question 3 different times, you know, 1 time each year for 3 years, you get to see how your thinking has evolved over time, which is really fun. And just kind of think about where you were 3 years ago. So, and then Hooray says that she's addicted to seltzer water too. Oh my gosh, this is so funny. There's another Dana Morningstar. I know, you know, there's a woman out there by the name of Dawn Morningstar that I came across, which I have to think we're related because there's not too many of us here in the United States. I've never met anybody with that last name that hasn't been family. So I don't know, weird. I should go introduce myself. I think she does similar stuff too, which is weird. Kind of emotional health, kind of self-awareness stuff. So Zachary says, oh my God, that journal is an amazing idea. Well, thank you. It's really fun. And the questions are fun. So for example, I'll just read you a few and then we'll do the meditation. One of the questions, how are you feeling right now and why? Next day is, what was the last thing to stress you out and why? What action are you currently taking that benefits your life the most and why? Let's see, what is one of the best decisions you've made lately and why? What main message do you think the last dream or nightmare you had was trying to tell you and why? Another question, if you could choose one person to be your mentor for the next year, who would you choose and why? What was your last small victory? What's been a good decision you've made lately and why? What is the one thing that you feel most content about with your life or yourself and why? Let's see, what made you smile today and why? What is the one habit you seem to have the most trouble breaking and why do you think this is? Who was the last person you tried to impress and why? What feature do you like best or least about your body and why? So, like I said, it can be fun. It can be a great way to get to open up discussion with kids, especially. And I think it can also, with children, it can role model your own thought process. And it can help normalize a lot of things that they might not realize that they're going through. So like struggles with their body or, things that they're challenges that they're having or problems that they're having. It can be, so when you're explaining the why, I think it can help them to become more reflective. Jennifer says, you probably answered this before, but where can you get this journal? Is it on Amazon? Yeah, they're all on Amazon. You can also order them through Barnes & Noble. So yeah, just search Dana Morningstar and everything should come up. And then there's also this one. There's I love this cover. It's a 5-minute gratitude journal. Isn't that cute? Ow, so cute. And it asks, it's the same 2 questions every day. And it's, what was the high point of your day and why? And then what 3 things are you grateful for today and why? And that's kind of fun. So. And then there's little quotes peppered through both of them. Yes. You know, Jack, real quick, he says he's preparing for bariatric sleeve surgery and was told that his stomach probably won't handle soda well when his stomach is the diameter of a fat highlighter marker pen. Yes, I've heard this from other people. So yeah, that's going to be a challenge, but you know, it sounds like definitely worth it. That bariatric surgery is going to just be absolutely life-changing. Okay, real quick, Tiffany, we're going to touch on yours really quick, and then we're going to go into our guided meditation because I think we're already over for time for tonight. But then we will be back. Real quick, book club is tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be discussing the book Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. So fantastic book. I hope you guys can make it for that discussion. Tiffany, it says, after my narcissist left 5 years ago, I feel no emotions, like I've lost my soul. Is that normal? It is normal after going through abuse, but because it's gone on for 5 years, I guess I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to see if you can find like a trauma therapist in your area. A lot of people swear by EMDR therapy, and like I said, I've heard wonderful things about it. I've never gone through it myself, but that might be something to consider. There's tons of online support groups out there, so that might be something else to consider. If it can just help to talk about this kind of stuff to other people that understand. And sometimes it really truly is just making that concerted effort to not wait until we feel like kind of getting back out into life, but then just deciding, okay, I'm just going to start taking some steps to get back out into life. Meet up, because normally what happens when we start doing that, the feelings tend to follow. So it's uncomfortable at first, but then once we start getting reintegrated and we're starting to feel, we're developing those connections, we're recultivating hobbies, we're doing things that's starting to nourish your soul, basically, is how you bring that back. So, and it might be, if you're open to talking to your family doctor or a psychiatrist, sometimes antidepressants can make an ocean of difference. So everybody's different. I know everybody has different opinions about that, but just something to consider. Tiffany says, oh, I thought I was the only one. I hope we get our souls back. Well, honey, you have your soul. That I know it feels like they can get your hooks in and just drag you straight to hell, but they can't. And I know it feels that it's not there, but you do still have that. You do still have like the deepest parts of yourself. So please know that. It's more of, sometimes it's more of that it's buried by all of the rubble that happens after abuse, because abuse is like a bomb goes off in your life and then everything's blown apart. And then you have to then you have this whole cleanup effort where you've got to put everything back together again. And it can be very overwhelming, but that core of who you are, that essence is still there. It's just buried under some rubble. So now it's going to be kind of digging it out again. But they don't have that kind of power over us. They really don't. Okay, so with that said, let's take some time. We'll do our guided meditation, and then I will hopefully see you guys tomorrow if you're interested in book club. So take some time, find a spot that's comfortable, whether you're seated or laying down. And allow your body to unwind and to get settled in. Allowing yourself to become completely grounded in this moment. When we are in the present moment, we are not in the future and we are not in the past. We are here. And right now, it's a good place. It's a safe place. It's a comfortable place. There is a lot that is right about this moment. And there is a lot that is right about you. So taking some time right now, just breathing. Just allowing your body to relax. Paying attention to the ebb and flow of your breath. As your chest rises and falls. And bringing your attention to the top of your forehead. Releasing any tension, stress, or anxiety that you might be holding on to. Relaxing your eyebrows, your eyes, your cheeks, and your jaw. Allowing your tongue to fall from the roof of your mouth. Relaxing your neck, your shoulders. Feeling the weight of your arms as you relax your neck and shoulders. Relaxing your chest and your stomach. Noticing if you're clenching your chest or your stomach. Just allowing any of that tension to relax. And feeling the weight of your torso as you do so. Relaxing your arms, your forearms, your wrists, your hands and your fingers, allowing them to grow heavy with each passing breath. Feeling the weight of your hands as you relax your muscles. Relaxing your hips and your thighs. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Relaxing your calves, your feet and your toes. allowing your legs to grow heavy as you relax. And continuing to breathe. With each breath, drawing that breath down deep, deep into the bases of your lungs, down into your stomach. Allowing your chest to rise and fall. And with each inhale, visualizing a healing, restorative, cleansing white light. And everything about this white light, it's peaceful, it's calming, it's nourishing, it's healing. It gives you a sense of peace and calm. Breathing that in. Visualizing that breath going down, 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 down to the bases of your lungs, your stomach, down into your legs, as deep as you can. And with each exhale, releasing any stress or tension, anger that you're ready to release. And you might find it helpful to visualize that exhale as some sort of shade of gray. Maybe it's a light gray, maybe it's medium, maybe it's a darker shade, depending on the severity of the emotion or the degree of the emotion. So breathing in that healing, restorative, regenerating light. Allowing it to fill up your body, going down your arms, up into your head, down your chest, into your legs. Just easily and effortlessly moving its way between every single cell in your body. Feeling that healing energy as it moves through you. And then breathing out any stress, tension, anger, or anxiety that you're ready to release. Let's do that for the next 3 breaths. With each breath in, realizing whenever you connect to this healing energy, just realizing that it is all around you every moment of every day, and that you can reconnect to it at any time. And that there truly is so much that is good in this world and that is good about you, and that we can take so much of what has happened to us and use it for our highest and greatest good. Even though we might not know how to do that right now, it is possible. And so that's going to be the direction that we head. And continuing to breathe. And if you find certain areas of your body tensing up again, perhaps sending some breath directly to that area and allowing it to relax. There is so much that is right about you. You have become so incredibly self-aware and self-protective. You know your self-worth. You know that you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. That you are a person worth valuing and worth being treated with value. You are compassionate, understanding. You guys ask fantastic questions, intelligent, creative, funny, determined, dedicated, powerful. I think everybody here is an absolute warrior. You've been through so much and you are coming out on top. You are powerful. And I hope that you can really hear the words that I'm saying and just allow yourself to absorb them as much as you can, because it's all true. And if it wasn't true, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be wasting my time. So let's take some time to give yourself, to just acknowledge how much you've gone through and where you are today. Just letting yourself know that you are proud of yourself. You've come a long way. You are strong and capable and powerful. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Come on back. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I will see you tomorrow, book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And have a wonderful rest of your evening. And as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and have a great night. Okay. Goodbye.